On Friday, Congress passed the National Defense Authorization Act for the 2023 fiscal year. Now, every year, the NDAA authorizes funding levels, provides authorities for the U.S. military and other critical defense priorities, and makes sure troops have training and equipment they need to carry out our missions. Joining us now to talk more about this legislation is Congressman Michael McCaul, the Republican leader of the Foreign Affairs Committee. Good morning, and thank you so much for joining us, Congressman.
Thanks, Jenny. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Congressman, the National Defense Authorization Act authorizes a total of more than $850 billion for national defense. Part of that money will go give our service members a raise about 4.6%. But how else does this law financially benefit them?
Well, we want to give our men and women in service in uniform a pay raise, and we do that. We went above the president's request because this is a very dangerous time with Russia and Ukraine, China threatening Taiwan, Iran, North Korea. We need to make sure our military has the resources necessary to defend the free world. And that includes our defense industrial base, the ability to make weapons more quickly and cheaper. And that's a big part of the bill I had in this National Defense Authorization. And in addition, the Fentanyl Act, which will basically allow us to sanction countries that make synthetic fentanyls and provide greater law enforcement to stop the flow across our borders. We've had 100,000 people die this year from fentanyls, one person every 7 minutes, and usually young people. That's more than what we lost in Vietnam in 2 decades.
And it's definitely a crisis that is hit Central Texas. Let me also ask you this. This new law eliminates that COVID-19 vaccine mandate. When does that go into effect, and why is that so important, Congressman?
Well, it'll go into effect upon the signing of the bill. And I think, everybody's adults. If they want to get the vaccine, they can. But to mandate it I think that's a decision of choice. I personally got vaccinated multiple times and a booster. But I think that just safeguards our warfighter. But there are many things in here above that I think are extremely important. For instance, my Ukraine war crimes bill got passed in the National Defense Authorization. This will allow us to gather the evidence, to make the case, to prosecute those responsible for these horrific war crimes that we're seeing take place in Ukraine. And on the local front in Austin, I'm particularly proud of my Peace Through Music Diplomacy Act, which the Grammys are very excited about, that we put in the National Defense Authorization because it's our soft power across the world. It's our universal language. And to utilize our musicians to advance U.S. foreign policy across the globe, to me, is really exciting.
That was unusual. There's another piece that's unusual about your bill. But before that, can you elaborate as much as you can on this legislation's focus on disruptive technologies like hypersonic weapons?
Right. So that's part of our defense industrial base. China launched their hypersonic weapon that we don't have in the United States. It's so fast that we can't stop it. Sadly, it's built on the backbone of American technology. And we need to stop selling this technology to China. And so the part in the bill that I passed has to do with the defense industrial base, so we can catch up to countries like China when it comes to these advanced weapon systems. We're not just focused on the Middle East anymore. We have foreign nation adversary states like China that we got to start paying attention to. And our weapon systems need to be reflective of that new threat that we face today.
Earlier, you mentioned the Peace Through Music Diplomacy Act. That's sort of unusual, right, for a defense bill. And you also have an amendment in here that talks about the Shark Fin Sales Elimination Act. What is that, Congressman?
Well, my wife and I are conservationists. My wife was an oceanographer, still is. She tracked Soviet submarines for naval intelligence. And, this has been illegal in the state of Texas for quite some time. But the idea that you cut the shark fin off to sell the fin and then let the shark go to the bottom of the ocean is a very inhumane practice. Mm-hmm. And we believe that should be a law that's nationwide. And so that's why we were very pleased to pass that one. I think the Peace Through Music Diplomacy Act just really talks about, we have hard power, and I sign off on all foreign military weapon sales, but we also have the soft power. And many times, I don't think we utilize that soft power. And the power of music, like we were at the Kennedy Center Music Awards, it's very universal. And it hits so many countries around the world. Like, when U2 Bono performed in Paris after the terrorist attacks in Paris, it really had a profound impact on culture and universal language. And so we think that's appropriate to utilize in our State Department.
Music certainly hits all of us and has such an impact on such a wide audience. Congressman Michael McCaul has served Central Texas since 2005. We appreciate your time. We know that it is tight for you this morning. Have a good morning.
Thanks, Jeannie. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.